All right, thank you so much. Good afternoon, everyone. So my name is Tunsisa Oriso. I'm assistant professor of soil science at Lincoln University of Missouri. So that's my office address, office location, my contact info, my telephone number, and Lincoln University email if there are any questions related to soils. So today I'm going to give you just a background or highlight of what I do here at Lincoln. So when we meet on April 11th, you know what to expect or what kind of hands-on experience or opportunity we provide, okay? So my lab focuses on soil health and developing soil health indicators, including the ones I'm showing here on this slide. So we focus on so many soil health indicators, but in particular, we focus on respiration, active carbon, and soil protein. And the reason why we focus on these indicators is because respiration is an indicator of microbial activity, okay? So we need in our soils active microbial community, and one way to measure that is using respiration. And then active carbon is the available food source for that microbial community, okay? So we have to measure that to see how much food and energy in the soil for that microbial community is. And then soil protein is a nitrogen pool or the nitrogen source for both plants as well as for the microbial community in the soil. So what we are doing is we are trying to validate the indicators for this measurements in Missouri conditions and see how sensitive they are to different management practices, okay? Whether that's vegetable production or corn production, corn soybean production, or any other production system. So we test sensitivity of these indicators. So, basically, there are, four things that we are focusing on. So the first thing is to try to understand these indicators, okay? We have to understand these indicators, like I said, how sensitive they are to different management practices, okay? And then once we do that, the idea is to kind of move or transition these indicators to commercial soil testing labs, okay? From research, right now we're doing research on them. Once we have a better understanding of how sensitive they are to different management practices, the idea is just to move them to commercial soil testing labs so that, customers or, stakeholders, including farmers, they can have access to these indicators through these commercial soil testing labs. And the other thing we're trying to do is to understand if there is any linkage or relationship between these indicators and agronomic or horticultural outputs. For example, is soil protein or respiration or active carbon related to crop yield? Is there any connection? Is there any linkage? So one of the things we're trying to do in my lab is just try to see if there is any relationship between these indicators and crop productivity or agronomic or horticultural outputs. And finally, we do education and outreach, using different handheld devices to, educate or give farmers hands-on experience how to measure these indicators in field conditions. So when we talk about soil health, so we talk about three different soil properties, right? So we talk about soil physical properties, soil chemical properties, and soil biological properties, right? And the one in the middle, the soil chemical or the standard nutrient test, is the one that you get from certified soil testing lab. Okay, so you take a soil sample from your field, send out to a certified soil testing lab, and you get a report back. So that's what we call the standard soil nutrient test. So traditionally, the focus has been on that chemical aspect of the soil health. So the other two, the physical and the biological soil health, those have been ignored. So that's why we have to try to shift the focus from the standard nutrient test to biology and physics as well, because just taking care of the nutrient aspect or the chemistry aspect of the soil is not a guarantee to get the maximum yield. Okay, so there are different indicators under each of these categories. For example, soil physical health, you can measure aggregate stability using rainfall simulation or wet sieving technique or image analysis. And also you can, measure soil compaction using a penetrometer or compaction tester, okay? And then standard nutrient test, you have pH, you have organic matter using LOI or loss on ignition, CEC, that's the cation exchange capacity, that tells you your soil's ability to hold on to nutrients, okay? So if your soil has a low CEC, so adding too much nutrient is not going to help because the soil's ability to hold on to those nutrients is very limited. And then you look at the micronutrients and the micronutrients. Macros are those nutrients that are needed in large quantities. And then the micronutrients are the ones that are needed in smaller quantities. But both of them are essential, okay? Both micro and micronutrients are essential. Plants cannot complete their life cycle if any one of them are deficient, okay? So you have to make sure that those micros and macros are present at optimum level in your soil. And then the soil biology, there are different indicators that can be used to measure soil biology, but like I said, my focus right now is on the active portion of the organic matter pool, because like I said, that's the source of the energy and the food for the microbial community that recycle the nutrients to the crops, okay? So the indicators that we use to measure soil biology include available carbon, also known as active carbon. Available nitrogen can be measured using soil protein, and then microbial activity can be measured via soil respiration, enzyme activity, or PLFA, which is phospholipid fatty acid analysis. So when we meet on April 11th, so I'll show you how to measure aggregate stability using image analysis. So simply using your smartphone, okay, that's shown here, you have 3 pieces of soils. You can take a picture and use an app. Then you can determine the aggregate stability index that way. So we'll show you that. It only takes 15 to 20 minutes. And then using a compaction tester, we can show you how to measure surface and subsurface compaction status in soil. Okay, so that's for the physical soil health measurement. And then for the biology part, we'll show you how to measure active carbon using a professional field kit shown in here. Okay. And then we'll also show how respiration can be measured using a handheld device known as Solvita digital calorimeter. Okay, so we'll show this 4 demonstrations when we meet on April 11th. So the one thing that I want people to keep in mind is that soil fertility is just one factor among many other factors that limit crop yield, okay? So soil fertility or nutrients, those are not the only factors that limit your crop productivity or your production. So there are so many factors. Okay, so for example, in here, what you see in this picture is that this is the maximum production level in here. Okay, so that's based on the maximum available solar energy. Okay, so the plants should be able to convert the maximum available solar energy into carbohydrates, right? But that's not most of the time possible or realistic because there are so many factors that limit that maximum productivity, okay? So those factors include, for example, lack of moisture in your soil, okay? If moisture is a limiting factor, it's going to be hard to achieve that maximum yield potential. Also, fertility, like I said, it's just one factor among many. So that's going to be another important factor that limits productivity. Poor crop stand is another factor. Poor soil structure, like I said, chemistry is not the only factor. Soil structure, so that's the physical soil property, very important, that determines gas water exchange between soil and atmosphere. So it's very important for the microbes, for the roots, and so many other things. And then crop variety. So using a proper crop variety is another important thing to consider. Weeds are very important. Insects and disease, those are another important factors that limit crop yield. So as a producer, the challenge is to identify all yield limiting factors and eliminate if possible. If not, try to minimize the impact or the influence of those yield limiting factors in order to achieve that maximum crop yield. All right. So I guess that's all I have for today. So these are just photos that we have taken from our outreach activities, showing us, doing different things or demonstrating different things at different locations across Missouri. Okay, so this one is from Kansas City and Sankara field, showing active carbon measurement, and then compaction surface and subsurface compaction testing out in the field. So that's all I have for today. If you have any questions, I'll try to answer.
Very good. Thank you.
Yeah. Any questions? No, online? No questions? Okay, good. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you.
Excuse me.
Question? No,
Could I did have a question.
Oh, there's a question online.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, thank you, Dr. Harissa. It's Ryan at Sankara Farm. Yeah, appreciate the presentation. I did want to ask a question about the using the camera to get some information about the soil. If you could speak a little bit more about the you said there was an app that you could use the camera on a smartphone to get some analysis of the soil.
Yeah, so image analysis. Yeah. So there's an app that you can download on your smartphone. So like I said, there will be an opportunity on April 11th. It will demonstrate how you can take a picture and then using that app, you should be able to determine aggregate stability index. So I think the best way to do that would be to have two sets of soils from different management practices. For example, one from no-till versus the other one from conventional till. And then, you can use that app and then determine aggregate stability index of those two soils. And then you can easily tell the difference or say which one has a better aggregate stability versus which one doesn't. So that's how it can be done. And like I said, there will be an opportunity for us to demonstrate that on April 11th.
Okay, thank you.
Right.
Good afternoon, everybody. Here online. My part will be fruit tree production and management. I'm a horticulturist. All my life, I got my BSc plant production. Then I got from Libya. I got my master from UC Davis, California, in viticulture. And then I went to Washington State, Pullman. I got my PhD there in apple and pears production. For horticulture in general, it's a science in the School of Agriculture. It covers many areas: fruit production, vegetable, floriculture, and landscape, tissue culture, and they add to it at the end medicinal plants and lawn plants. Lawn plants, these plants you see in the football field, this is the specialist of horticulturists. They are the one who follow it and how to get good ones. This is you see the grapes here. This is the direction now to reduce a little bit sugar. So this variety, it's called Golden Globe. It's a little bit low in sugar comparing with other varieties, because the sugars increase by increasing maturity. Over 20% to 70%, that goes for raisin. The others go for table, 24, 23, till maybe 18. 18 or less go for juice. Usually, grape is very, very income encouraging, especially the variety used in wine, and California and now Oregon in the same, not the same quantity, but they have the same direction, and they have well-known wine quality, even in Europe, not just here in the States. Okay, this is when I talk about fruit trees here in Missouri or here in this area, there is a part I'm not going to talk about it and spend time in it because it is not going to grow anyway. And if you think about my statement, you go and see Finca Farm, and you see how the figs are protected. And I know it's going to freeze. It is protected, all of it covered in the greenhouse and outside by straw, and it will freeze till the ground level and start a new growth next year. So it doesn't have hardwood. Most of it just softwood with small fruits. So here, when I say deciduous trees, these are the main trees I think and I believe will fit in Missouri, because they lose their leaves and they go through dormancy in the winter till the beginning of spring. That will protect them. For example, I have apples and pears and quince. You can hear a lot when you see in the market apples and pears. If you go to Walmart, you can say, but you cannot see usually quince, because the quince this is used as rootstock. And if we got some fruit of it, it is not eatable. So they make it and they add sugar to it to be juice or jam and jelly. It's rootstock for pears. And it goes also for apples, but apples, they have good rootstock. It is initiated and produced in England, UK. It's MM and EM, East Malling and Malling Morton. Started with Malling Morton. They produce that rootstocks, and they are starting from number 1 to number 27. Then joined with another research station in England, it's called Morton. So now you can see the rootstock, they say MM. If it is MM, it's from just 100, maybe to 116. And these, the two one, EM and MM, they have different effect of dwarfness. If you want very dwarf tree, we suggest this. If you want a vigorous one, we suggest this. Okay, these are apples, but they are got through breeding, so they produce EM and FM. Stone fruits, these are apricot, plums, peaches, cherry, almond. These are all of them. They are stone fruits. And when I say pistachio as example, we have another hazelnut, and now they are producing a lot fruit in Oregon from hazel farms. That's what. we have another good crop, which is grapes. We have the other pomegranate, persimmon, and kiwi. Persimmon, we have it here in front of the Allen Hall. You have female, if you are going out, female on your left side and male on right side. So they are separate. They have to be pollinated, and you have to have male and female, like palm, like pistachio. Pistachio is stone fruits, it's nuts, but you have male and females, and you don't need insect. Yes,
Apricots, do they need?
no, apricot, peaches. It's better to plant two different varieties together for all crops because to get better crop, but it is self-fertile. Peaches, we have GH Hale, it's male sterile. So we have to plant it, but we recommend when you plant crop, you plant it in the row. Don't mix your trees like this. You have to be, this is variety and this is variety, and they are cross-pollinate. Because the requirement of this one, maybe we know it's even the disease will affect this variety and not affect this variety. So if you did together, you're gonna spray all the line or the row just for 1 or 2 trees. No, we have to put rows, separate rows. We have this one, for example, figs. When I say, we don't have figs. When you have figs, this is the only one. There is a special insect for it. It is not mosquito. They call it, best people or insect people, they call it wasps. But it's specifically not just any wasp. It's Blastophaga sensis. This insect lay its eggs in the fruit of the male. And when the eggs hatch, they have larvae and that kind, they try to get out. When it get out, it take pollen grain on hair wings, hair feet, and take it to the female flower, which is open. So it is fertilized. This is about fig. This one is here. Kiwi, it's new crop. It's originally from China and that country. And it's a good producer in California, in Fresno area, very good producer. The berries, this one for trees, we have just mulberry. The other ones, they are shrubs. So they cannot say they are fruit trees, they are shrubs. And evergreen, we have olive, citrus, different kind, different varieties. Palm dates, which is really good one, both of these in California. Avocado, mango, banana, guava, these are, all of them are evergreen. So for me, for research, maybe you grow them in the greenhouse, but you have to have heated the greenhouse. But otherwise, don't try them because they will collapse. These are not for Missouri. Till today, we have frost. Today morning, we have frost. Okay. Size selection. This is, I'm not going to talk about it that much, but I'm just, if I want to buy land or a farmer want to buy land, I have some recommendation for him. Yeah. Okay. So we will talk more about it, but in general, we have fertile, well-drained soil, low water table. I mean, low water table because now we have problem back home in Libya. The water table got up till it pushes the water pipes out. Houses start falling because there was a crack somewhere under layer of soil surface. So the water table getting up. When this is the tree will die also too in the future because roots are living. They need oxygen, and you just suck them with water. That's gonna lose the trees too. So no shallow hard ban or rocks. We are not talking about strawberry or pepper or tomato. We are talking about fruit trees with have deep rooted, very, yeah, some of them they go horizontally, some of them reach maybe 20 feet, more than 20 feet, like grapes. So, and down. Except when I'm talking about this one, except palm date. Palm date, even it can grow in pond of water. Palm date, because it has system inside in the roots, it's save or store oxygen in the roots. This is the only crop that no windy area. We come to the hills, we don't plant there. We only plant on the slope of the hill, and we don't plant at the bottom of the hill because there will be there air pocket, and there will be a lot of humidity and cause a lot of trouble. This is the propagation by seed. This is seed usually to produce fruit stocks. For fruit trees, we don't, because it doesn't come out true to type. Maybe you have 1 in 1,000. For example, in palm days, maybe 1 in 1,000, you kind of find good variety, good fruits. Otherwise, it is not. And we have, I will talk about this, and I will show you the tools, hopefully, in April 25th. Soil preparation, planting, irrigation, fertilization. This is Dr. So we'll talk about them, but here just for example, for me, planting. This is the one which is I care about. Then I will go to irrigation, how to irrigate and when. He will talk about maybe to talk about how to use the instrument to measure. Fertilization, here fertilization, I don't mean fertilization of ovary. Here for adding fertilizer. Pruning. Pruning, this is pruning for just for small trees for training, or pruning when the tree reach maturity. So because we have to be very careful to make a good frame for future. Otherwise, we'll face trouble. Even how to harvest those crops. And for training, for example, we avoid this in branches. We avoid this because this one, if some load will break during heavy crops. So we prefer wide angle. This is kind of system. Pruning for training, we have for good trees, big tree, we have pruning for system called thinning out, and the other one is heading back. Thinning out, I come to the inside the trees and cut branches. Heading back from the top, we have apical buds and the shoots going up, we cut them back to certain level. This is the two system known in horticulture. Training, the same thing. That one is pruning when the seedling or tree is still young. But here you see in the center, you see this tree on the left and the tree on the right. This happened to it thinning out. So we want more sun to get in. And this one heading back. This is really good one. If you see the tree here in front, we don't have any pruning for it or anything or training. You can see it how in the future they're gonna manage to pick the fruit. Okay, this one, pollination, fertilization, fruited. For example, when we do fruit thinning, we need to do fruit thinning because some varieties, some trees in excellent condition, they produce a lot of fruits. So we have to do thinning for them. So this one, either manually or using growth regulator. We can use the growth regulator. For example, here I show, you can see the honeybees. Honeybees is really needed for stone fruits. Because, for example, if I have a choice, apples and almond, or peaches and almond, I have two fields. I have to put honeybees in the almond field, okay? Because in the almond, we're gonna eat seeds. In the other one, apricot and peaches, we're gonna eat fresh, the flesh part. So it is very essential for Okay, for weed, this is weed. For weed, we can do it for biomechanical, by cover crops. Use cover crops, some plants competing with other plants. By herbicide, which is sometimes we have to. Then we don't have to worry about weeds. If in case of that weed doesn't compete for nutrients, doesn't compete for water, it's not a source of disease, source of insect. There's a lot of condition. If it doesn't get there, we don't worry about it. Okay, and I think time is running and I ask.
So Zua says, which cultivars of these fruit trees are less susceptible to spring frost damage? And then she says, for example, is it hard to get a consistent crop from apricots? Is there a specific variety you would recommend?
Yeah, because this one, I talked to one farmer in another city, and one farmer I'm happy he's with us here. He said the same thing, no beach this year because the frost. If you have any variety, flower early and frost come after it, you lost that crop. We prefer, for example, pears and apples because they are staying longer dormant because they need more hours. We'll call it chilling hours. We will talk about this in 25th, chilling hours. So that's the one which we can do. But otherwise, in this area, you don't predict the frost. Sometimes you don't have a chance to have crop in that one. Thank you. Thanks. Is there more question? Okay, thank you.
Afternoon. Thank you again for joining us today. I guess I'll just give an overview today on tree fruit diseases, and later in May, we will get into more details on specific issues depending on what you would like addressed. My name is Wana Kaluasha. I'm a plant pathology assistant professor here, and I will get started by just giving this overview on what the common tree fruits are grown in Missouri. I kind of classify them into two categories. Dr. Guma has already given detail on this since that is his specialty. But from what I read, the majority of tree fruits grown include apples and pears. And then 5 of these are classified in a group known as stone fruits. So these include peaches, nectarines, apricots, plums, and cherries. And they are called so because of that stone that they have in the center if you look at the image of the apricots. And so just like with any other plant you might grow, tree fruits have several challenges, some of which have already come up in earlier presentations, things such as low winter temperatures and spring frost damage. We have several insect pests as well, birds for fruits like cherries, and cherries are susceptible to disorders such as cracking. And then some fruits are prone to bruising and then diseases, which is what I will focus on today. When we talk about diseases, we have several causal agents, which are called pathogens. And these include fungi, bacteria, nematodes, viruses, and phytoplasmas. And most of the diseases are caused by fungi. I put an estimate percent, causing about 80% of known diseases. And I have here just to help you visualize. So that's an image of a plant cell. So you can have in context the sizes of these different pathogens. Our largest would be the nematodes. That is a nematode with its stylet piercing through the plant cell. Here is fungal mycelia, and then the virus particles, bacterial cells are microscopic. And so these are very tiny and inside the plant cell. So when we talk about diseases and management later on, it's very important to understand a concept known as the disease triangle. The disease triangle is just referring to the different factors that you need for disease to occur. And so in order to have disease, you need a pathogen, which could be any of the ones I mentioned on the previous slide, and that pathogen has to be virulent, so it should be able to cause disease. You also need a host that is susceptible and you need an environment that's going to favor the development of disease. Once you have those three, we then have what we call a disease cycle. So you have your pathogen and it infects your plant or your tree. It colonizes your tree, begins to reproduce. It gets dispersed by wind, soil, water, air, and even humans when you move, plant equipment around your farm. And then it inoculates, and this cycle can go over and over. So certain diseases are termed monocyclic because you have one cycle of disease in a growing season. Those are easier to manage, but there are some that are polycyclic because you have this cycle going over and over and over. And so it's good to understand what disease you are dealing with. So I just have an overview here because today is kind of an intro and we will go into more detail later in May. But common diseases in Missouri on fruits such as apples and pears could be apple scab. It will look something like that. Causes these lesions on your fruit and your leaves. Powdery mildew will cause symptoms on your leaves, but also causes this russetting on your apples. And then diseases such as cedar apple rust. There are rust spores on the underside of your leaf. We have fire blight, which is a very big disease in the fruit industry in the US and other places. And then we have diseases such as white rot, which could cause symptoms on your twigs and branches as well as your fruit. And we have sooty blotch and fly speck. These two are interesting. So with sooty blotch right here, so these two only affect the surface of your fruit. Sooty blotch can be washed off easily, but fly speck cannot. So those lesions are on the fruit. They don't cause rot on the inside, but they make it look not good, probably not marketable. And then I classify the common diseases of stone fruits, so peaches, nectarines, apricots, plums, and cherries. And these could include brown rot, which could get like that when very severe, and you don't want anything like that in your orchard because that is a source of inoculum, which could then infect healthy fruits. And then peach leaf curl causes this crinkling of your leaves, as in the picture here. We also have diseases such as bacterial spot, causes spots on your fruit. We have cankers that could develop on your branches and twigs. So yeah, I guess we saw brown rot and peach leaf curl, a bacterial spot, a bacterial canker. And then we have black knot, which causes this black knot on your twigs, caused by fungal pathogen. And we have plant pockets, cherry leaf spot affecting your leaves, and Phytophthora root rot, which can affect the color, stem count of your tree, and you could get a complete decline over time. So it's very important that we know what pathogen we're dealing with, because as we can see based on these symptoms, they could affect any part of your tree. And I try to summarize it here just so we keep this in mind going forward. I picked an apple tree just because it was the easiest to find, but here's an anatomy. So we have our leaves, the flowers, the fruit, the branches, and the trunk. And so look at what diseases can do. These diseases could actually affect all these plant parts, and overall, they will result in reduced fruit yields, reduced fruit quality, and also little to no marketability of your fruit if you have fruits looking like what we saw earlier. And so it's very, very critical that we manage these diseases, because it takes many years to get your tree fruiting from when you establish, between 2 to 5 from what I read for these tree fruits. And so just the overview, when managing diseases, we have these 5 principles that are good to keep in mind. We try to say, see if you can exclude the pathogen. So are you able to keep the pathogen away from your production area? An example of a practice here would be starting off your season with clean planting material. And then secondly, if it so happens you got the pathogen into your production area, are you able to remove it, like rogging, pull out disease plants? For the fruit tree, it might be tricky because that's a whole tree, but I know fire blight outbreaks where they had to just clear orchards to prevent further infection. Therapy, things such as hot water treatments. And then can you use practices that slow down the development of disease? such as selecting a good site that has well-drained soils, clean soils, and also using cultural practices such as pruning, training, grafting, which were talked about previously, and using resistant cultivars is always the #1 recommended. So start off with that and then integrate with these other ones. And then protection, it so happens, you get something, so you might have chemicals to treat the pathogen, but a lot of applications are actually made to protect your plant. So that would be a preventative application as well. And so for these tree fruit diseases, there are common management options available and recommended, things such as cultural practices, which we've looked at, things like selecting a good site, removing alternate hosts for diseases such as the cedar apple rust, keeping your environment clean and removing inoculum sources like the brown rot. You have something like that, you don't want that persisting, get rid of it. Pruning and training to improve the airflow, because a lot of these pathogens like high humid and humid conditions, and irrigation and fertilization to ensure you have a healthy plant that's able to fight off disease if it gets infected. And then using healthy planting stock, grafting to resistant rootstock, using resistant varieties, and then disease forecasting is a very good one if available. And I know that in New York, they use some forecasts for diseases like apple scab. So these guys have studied the conditions and environmental factors that seem to favor disease, and then they're able to develop a model that kind of guides the farmers so that they're able to target their applications of any chemicals to avoid indiscriminate use and development of resistant populations among pathogens, and also it's less costly for them. And so I'll end with this. We'll go into more detail, but just to consider as you develop a disease management plan, which is recommended at the beginning of every growing season, have a plan. And when you do get faced with diseases, know the enemy is what we say. So have an accurate, rapid diagnosis of your pathogen. You have to understand the disease cycle and the disease triangle, because each pathogen will be different. It might be attacking the plant at budding or blooming, or later there's summer diseases. So it's good to know all of those factors and the disease triangle, so then you're able to make timely decision to prevent losses to your crop. And it's always recommended to use a combination of methods rather than rely on one. So integrated disease management is what we recommend for any disease. So thank you, and I guess I will end here. If there are any specific issues you'd like us to focus on with regards to diseases, I'll be happy to incorporate those in the next presentation in May. Thank you.
There's a question in the chat. It says, agroforestry practices such as intercropping fruit trees with specialty crops and native plants helpful in mitigating the prevalence of diseases in an orchard?
Oh, thank you. That's a great question. I think it would. I mean, I'm thinking of intercropping is also recommended in, like, crop production in fruit trees. I feel like it would. It might be a good one for things like weed control. For disease, just make sure it's not an alternate host of the pathogens that might affect the crops you have in, because a disease like cedar apple rust, for example, needs an alternate host to complete its life cycle. So if you have something like that, something that's an alternate host, then you're still harboring onto the pathogen. If it is something that would deter the pathogen, I mean, I don't see why not it would be used.
Hello, everyone. Today, I'm really excited to talk about insect-specific IPM strategies for sustainable fruit tree production in Missouri. So let's look at what we're going to be talking about. So we'll start off with what IPM is really about. Then we're going to talk about some common insect pests that are identified in fruit trees. Then we talk about the specific strategies for tackling these pests. Then we talk about some other stuff like community engagement, and then we wrap up with some future direction and conclusion. So what is IPM all about? So IPM, it's really like a band where we have so many players in it, but these players cannot work independently. So we need these players to work together in order to produce beautiful music. So in IPM, we use a mix of different approaches to tackle pests in such a way that it is good for our planet. So it's all about being smart, watching our trees closely, and then we only use our chemicals as a last resort or when we actually need to use it. And whenever we want to use chemicals, we want to use the ones that are selective. Yeah. But there are some principles that IPM works on. It focuses on prevention, observation, and intervention. But of course, in all, it has to involve a balanced approach where it combines different control strategies. And by doing so, we minimize pesticide use and then we preserve our ecosystem. So remember, we are not working against the environment. We are actually working with it, working in harmony with nature. So let's look at some of the common insect pests that we can find in our fruit orchards. We have the codling moths, the apple maggots, we have Japanese beetles, we have plum cocolio, and the peach tree borers. So in this slide, I just show you some of the pictures of the insects. From top left to right and bottom to left right, we have the codling moth. You can see the adults, and that's the larvae. Then we have the apple maggot, Japanese beetles that defoliate the leaves and also eats the fruit. Then the plum cocolio and the peach tree borers. So let's look at, so we are here today because we want to talk about IPM. So let's talk about what we can do to tackle these small creatures in our field, in our orchards. So first we want to do some kind of smart practices like crop rotation. But you know, for fruit trees, this will take a very long time for you to do something like that. But in other ecosystems, this is possible. Planting resistant varieties. Then we go to decision support, like monitoring. We do some forecasting system for pest management. Then mechanical or physical control, or biological control and chemical control. So for this, we actually following like a pyramid, starting from down, going upward, where we start with using smart agricultural practices in order to discourage our pests. And then, of course, we have to observe our plants. After the plants are there, we have to keep on monitoring them. When we find something, then we decide whether is it necessary for us to apply a control measure. Then we move on to, okay, mechanical control, hand removal, some trapping, barriers, mulching, and all that. Then we also like encourage nature's defenders, like the natural enemies, to fight the battle for us. Then we only use chemical control as the last resort. So this is the IPM pyramid I'm talking about. So first we start with prevention by practicing good agronomic practices. Then we do detection monitoring, then we detect, we know our enemy, which one is there. Then we do some kind of mechanical or physical control, then biological control, then we end up with chemical control. So let's look at these approaches that are listed on the pyramid. So for cultural control or the smart agricultural practices, we have crop rotation, sanitation practices. Of course, when our fruits are mature, we want to harvest them at the right time. soil management, which the other speakers have talked about. Plant selection, you want to select the varieties that are pest resistant. Then physical barriers, mulching, and selective planting. Now, imagine yourself as a detective in your orchard. So you want to constantly be watching your trees to identify what is there. So we do regular monitoring so that we can catch the pest early enough. We don't want to wait until when the pest has reached a certain level where we cannot save our crops or where we cannot save our trees. We identify it, know that correct identification will lead you to developing the best control strategy for it. So you must know which particular pest you are dealing with. And then you develop threshold levels. And of course, you have to consider the environment in anything that you do. Then you document. So for mechanical control, these are some of the things that you can be doing, like hand picking, like for Japanese beetle. Then we do for trapping, we can also do trapping. We put sticky traps, light traps. We do like barriers on screen. We also till the soil, water management, mulching, and we can also do some kind of like temperature control to manage the pest. And then we invite nature's allies. So we want our orchards to be suitable in such a way that we have these natural enemies there. Sometimes they are in the environment and we just have to provide that niche for them to strive. And sometimes we have to physically like introduce them, like for classical biological control or for conservative biological control, where the natural enemy already exists in the system and you just have to do some other things to encourage it to strive in that environment. So natural enemies like lacewings, ladybugs, or some parasitic wasps. Then we also have microbial agents like BT for pest control. Then we have nematode utilizations, habitat for predators, like we create hedgerows, flowering plant. These ones will invite our natural enemies to come there. Then we also promote some diversity. Then we avoid the use of broad spectrum pesticides because most often the broad spectrum insecticides are very harmful to our natural enemies more than the pest itself. When we have done all these things, then we move on to chemical control if this is necessary, okay? Of course, you have to bear in mind that this should be an integrated approach. So you want to select your chemical in such a way that it's effective on the target pest. And you also have to bear in mind that chemical control is not our first line of defense. So we only use it when we have utilized all the other aspects of the IPM pyramid. So we have to do our application in such a way that it is targeted. You don't just go into the orchard and spray everywhere because you found a bug on this tree, and then you decide to spray the whole orchard. Probably maybe the bug is just, if you were monitoring your orchard, probably you just find it at a particular spot, you spray that particular spot. Okay, and this, by doing so, we are reducing environmental impact. And at the same time, you are also reducing, you are also not exposing the insects to a lot of chemicals that can lead them to developing resistance and becoming even more harder for you to control them. Then you also want to do correct timing. You want to use these pesticides at the time when the pests are more vulnerable to it. Yeah. You don't want to use chemicals for a pest that probably maybe it's the larva stage that is affecting the fruit, and the larva stage is within the fruit. And then you spray it on the outer part. It's not the adult that is the main culprit for destroying the fruit. The pest is found inside. So you want to be targeting it, the stage that is more vulnerable. And then you want to do appropriate selection. So you want to choose the pesticides that are less toxic, those that are more biodegradable. they will not last longer in the environment. And those that are also pest specific. You don't want to use chemicals that are broad spectrum that will just kill everything. Because remember, you have natural enemies also striving in the environment. And you want to protect them. So in doing all of this, first, you have to be safe. So safety first. So we want to adhere to the safety guidelines. We want to use our protective gears. Then we use the containers which we bought the chemical, we dispose of them properly and all that. Because the fact that these chemicals were able to kill an insect, it means that it has some killing something in it. The fact that it didn't kill you is just because the dose is little. So the more you keep on exposing yourself to this chemical over time, you don't know what's going to happen to you later on. Of course, it's going to have some effects. So in the future, just imagine like using drones, AI for precision agriculture, for pest management. Enhanced genetic engineering for biopesticides for targeted control, then climate adaptation. Then collaborative effort is very important. In as much as you want to control pests, if you control it in your orchard alone, maybe you will not succeed because the pest will move right away from your neighbor's orchard and get into your field. So we want to get that collaborative effort. And of course, we want to focus on being sustainable because we want our environment to be safe for us also to strive. So thank you so much. I'll end here by saying that as we move, we should all remember that IPM, it's all about a holistic approach. We want to save our environment, and we also want to strive in that environment in as much as we want to tackle this pest. Thank you so much.
Yeah, 2 questions. One says, are there any differences in pests or diseases in high density apple orchards versus conventional orchards, or increased or decreased occurrences?
That I didn't know, sorry.
So are there any differences in pests or diseases in high density apple orchards versus conventional orchards, or increased or decreased occurrences?
Okay, let me answer that question. You know that when we grow plants in very large quantity, okay, like monoculture, very big extended distance. Of course, there's some differences in terms of pest occurrence and the density. You don't expect someone who grows in a very large field and someone who grows in a small orchard to have the same pest density. Yeah, there will always be some differences. And sometimes when we grow crops in a very large quantity or in a very extended piece of land, it helps the pest to strive better because the pest has more food and more it's available. So when they get there, it's like they are feasting. It's a feast for them. Thank you. Next one.
What plants would be suggested for hedgerow protections for fruit trees? Are there super host plants for a wider spectrum of beneficial predators, or is it better to customize each fruit tree variety?
I think it would be better to customize each variety of fruit tree that you're growing, because not all the hedgerow will be suitable for one particular variety of fruit tree that you are growing. So you have to know what you're growing and decide, and then you can determine which one is suitable for your orchard.
As you can see, each topic we talk today connect with this part. And Dr. Foa's presentation was very good. Introduction to the fruit marketing and regulation, because she was talking about some safety issues, diseases is very important here, production, soil, all of those are topics that connect with fruit marketing and regulation. So let's start talking a little bit what we are going to tell in our presentation in June. The objective for this presentation is to connect with the other topics, but also to increase your knowledge and understanding of marketing regulation for selling fruit to final consumers, and to develop understanding and knowledge for marketing fruit in diverse market outlets. So it's very specific. The main thing we will be thinking here will be about an outline for the presentation will include how to sell fruit in Missouri, what are the regulations for selling in Missouri, and how you connect with the consumers. So we are regulated in many ways to sell products. So it's not like you decide to grow 2 or 3 apple trees in your house and you have a surplus of product and you want to go and sell it. That is possible. But we will be talking about that in our presentation in June. So we will talk about regulation for selling, and we are going to be specific about what kind of good agricultural practices you are going to follow, and also good handling practices. We will be talking about market outlets where you can bring those products to the market and connect with consumers. And in that way, we will be talking about what strategies you will need to develop or to follow to be able to be being successful or making money or being profitable. So we will talk a little bit about value-added products from your orchard and also how to sell fruit in Missouri. Very much this is in Missouri we're regulated by the Department of Health and Senior Services, but we will be talking more about this presentation when times come. At this point, I want to stop this thing here and thank you everybody for coming.